Okay, well, hello and welcome everybody as you join us today. My name is Rick Adams from practicalcsm.com. I'm the CEO and founder there, and as you probably know, our focus is on customer success management, training, certification, coaching, consulting, etc. And this is one of a series, well, in fact, a continuance of a series of live webinars that we gave last year called Coffee Bar Conversations, where each month I met a different thought leader either in the customer success space or related to that space, and picked their brains about a particular topic that was of interest to the CS community. And we're carrying on. We've changed the name. We're now calling it Customer Success Leadership Conversations, and this is the first one, but we've got one every month now, starting obviously in February. We've got one every month this year booked in, and I'm really pleased to have managed to get hold of somebody who is actually very important in their role and also very knowledgeable in their role, called Tae Hea Nahm, who is the co-founder at Storm Ventures. And he is coming in to talk to me about the importance of customer success from an investor's perspective. So Tae Hea, welcome. Great to have you with us.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to participate and be a member of your broader community as well, too.
Thank you so much. And yeah, as I said, really, really pleased you're here because as we were just saying before we went live, the customer success profession isn't that mature as yet, hasn't been around that long compared to everybody else. And because of that, I think in our leadership here, we've risen quickly to leadership roles, generally speaking, within the customer success profession. And we might be, and indeed are, subject matter experts around customer success management, but we might not have had the management and leadership experience over a number of years that more incumbent roles have got. And so things like how, understanding the world of business, how does business actually work? And in particular, then, how does a company work with its investors? And, how do we make sure that we're on target to achieve the goals that we need to do, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe that is a little bit less understood in customer success than it might be, say, at the top of the senior leaders within sales or marketing or HR or whatever other department you want to name that's been around a lot longer. So I think this is a really important conversation, helping us to get a little bit more mature in what we do and understand that there's a bigger picture here, and of course we've got to fit into the bigger picture. The company doesn't want to fit in with us, we've got to fit in with the company, right?
That sounds great.
Okay, so just to let people know, and hopefully you're all sort of joining up as we speak, there is a chat window. Feel free to join us in the conversation, ask any questions for Tae Hea that you wish, or indeed make your own comments or observations. If you disagree with us, tell us why. And we will try and pick those conversation topics and questions up as we go along. If I miss something, if we don't see it, just type it again. If we miss it again, put it in capital letters. We'd love your input. I don't feel you have to, but we would love to see your questions, and then we'll be happy to answer them. But I think probably the obvious point to start, Tae Hea, if you don't mind, is just asking you a little bit about your background and your experience and how it relates both in general to your role now as an investor and a founder of an investment organization, but also how that relates to customer success management.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Tae Hea Nahm. I'm co-founder of Storm Ventures. We're a Silicon Valley-based VC. We just closed our 7th fund for over $200 million. And so we've raised a total of over $1 billion in assets under management. And we've invested in over 200 SaaS companies. Notable examples are, I was on the board of Marketo for 10 years. We're early investors in TalkDesk, Algolia, Pipedrive. And I've also written a couple of books about startups. One, Survival or Thrival, the company journey. A second one, Change or Be Changed, which is about how not to get fired. And in the process of writing a third about how to unlock growth. Because as an early stage investor, what we found is that if companies unlock growth, we make money. And if they don't unlock growth, we lose money.
Yeah.
And so this question about how to unlock and then scale growth is one that I've spent like 15 years on, and customer success I found is sort of a critical element of this sort of problem. And so that's what got me into spending more time on customer success as an investor and then as a board member of several companies.
So I know you mentioned that you're writing that third book, but do you have the other two books there with you by any chance?
I actually do. So this is the first one on the company journey. And then this is the second one, which is about change or be changed.
Change or be changed. Fantastic. Thank you for that. So do look out for those guys. I think they'll be very interesting. And actually, I haven't mentioned this to you, but also, well, actually every other month, we, not I, but a couple of other people on the team, they review a book and they then interview the author about their motivations and what's behind it, what they would like their readers to get out of the book. Perhaps we should have you back on for that sometime when you got that third book written.
That would be great. Yes.
But anyway, so yeah, great. Thank you again. Realize that your time is very precious, and as I said, I think for customer success as a profession, it's really helpful to get input from people like you, a fresh perspective from outside of the incubation center of customer success itself, to help sort of steady and guide us and make sure that the direction we're traveling in is one that really relates to the business as a whole. So, I mean, I think you've already really sort of said it, but let me just ask the question that I had in mind. How important would you say customer success management is as a topic to investors such as yourself, particularly perhaps SaaS company investors, but tech investors generally, in their investment decision making? Are they actually looking for that in the business plan?
It is, and let me explain to you why. So as a investor, as a venture capitalist, the number one factor that drives our returns is growth. So if you're a high growth company in general, you're going to generate returns. And if you're not, then it's going to be tough. And so growth comes in two ways. Growth comes from new customers, and growth comes from existing customers buying more. And so having existing customers buying more is where customer success plays a key role. And that's what led to my and investors in general interest in customer success, because as we build our spreadsheet models and trying to predict growth rate, we're trying to find the contribution from new customers and from existing customers. So
land, renew, expand, and then drive loyalty, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that expand component is an interesting one, because I think perhaps it could be argued that, if I say originally, but maybe like a few years ago, it may not have been seen as being necessarily the role or remit of the customer success manager at all. And I think that that is changing quite a lot. And I think that we're seeing that post initial sale, when the customer wasn't a customer, they were a prospect, that's someone else. Okay, well, sorry, pre-initial sale, my apologies. But post that initial sale, that prospect is now turned into a customer, but that doesn't mean that we're done with selling. And there's now a discussion and a debate about, okay, well, hang on, I'm trying to scratch our heads here. Who does the selling then at this point? Because we've got sales doing selling, and now we've also got customer success doing something that sort of looks and smells like selling, but yet, and you could even argue, you got account managers in the mix as well. Okay, just to confuse things as well. So how do we square that circle? How do we? What's your preferred setup in terms of if you like, the organizational hierarchy or the structure of how that customer goes? And I know that, like me, you're very keen on the experience that the customer gets and the customer journey. And I think one thing that customers don't particularly want is being handed from pillar to post, from this person to that person, having to start again, explain all the, the subtle nuances that you've explained to person A, and person B now is going to not be so useful to you until they understand why what they've just suggested won't work with me, because and now we've got to go through it all again. And they don't want that, right? So we want to try to deliver the most joined up experience to our customers as we possibly can, right from that very initial time when they've even heard of our name as an organization, let alone know whether they're going to buy anything from us, right the way through to the bitter end when there's no possible product left to sell them, to make that as joined up as possible. So with that in mind, how would do you have any recommendations around that from your point of view?
I do. So I look at the challenge here as not just expand, but growing customers, growing existing customers, because it includes expands, upsells, renewals, and all that. So, it's about growing.
Well,
and as you pointed out,
I mean, it could be an expansion of the initiative that we were called in to help them with, but it could be something completely different within the customer organization.
Yes.
Another opportunity completely. Yeah. Sorry, please carry on.
And so that's the goal. The business goal, as I, as an investor and board member, are focused on, is growth of the installed base. And then, as you point out, we have two constituencies. We have one, which is the customer itself. What is good for the customer? What does the customer want? And then the second is sort of internal, how to make sure you have an efficient, well-functioning execution machine. So as CEO now, and talking to CEOs, I'm trying to say, I want growth from the installed base. I got to keep my customers happy, and I need a cross-functional team that works. So how do I put this together? Well, it turns out that what customers want is they want a trusted advisor. They want someone they can trust that stays with them, and it's my trusted advisor that will help me become a hero. Okay. So that's what they want, is they want someone who's their trusted advisor who can make them a hero. And so you want someone to share best practices, advice, and things to help your champion become a hero. That is sort of the ideal relationship that we see. Now, by doing that, you can build a very close and trusting relationship. But it turns out selling is hard. Not because you don't have the relationship, but because you have the relationship, to be that trusted advisor and to be a salesman at the same time, then causes the customer to wonder, are you my trusted advisor or are you a salesman? Okay. Mm-hmm. And so there's an inherent conflict that comes up. And so we found that it's very helpful to sort of provide two different personas. Mm-hmm. So instead of making it one person, is to allow the customer to interact with both a salesperson in a sales context in these growth roles, and to look at this other person as their trusted advisor, that they can complain about this salesperson's trying to rip me off, or I don't need this, or provide that back channel communication. And if you do this well, then you can actually maximize sales and customer happiness.
That's really interesting. So it sounds like what you're saying is that from the customer's point of view, actually it's less confusing to have two people than to have one, because one person, you've now got to almost be internally in conflict when you're talking to them. With two people, it negates that conflict that they feel.
Yeah, if it's in one person, it's hard to gain that complete trust of the customer.
Yeah. And so what perhaps that enables the customer to do is to feel more comfortable, like negotiating and browbeating the salesperson, playing it hard in the contract to get that little bit extra, etc., whilst at the same time having a very different, perhaps more comfortable, relaxed conversation with the person who's there to help them get the value around that person doing them favors. Could you elaborate
Yes.
a little bit more in this? Do you mind spending a little bit more time helping me plan out exactly how to do this?
Yes,
So
and also this way you
totally
have a
different thing.
higher probability of retaining the customer and everything,
Yeah.
because the customer has this trusted advisor that wants to make me a hero.
So
The customer feels that.
when does the trusted advisor role start?
The best is if it even starts at pre-sales.
What we say. This is what
Yeah.
we say. Because if you introduce
Yeah.
that at pre-sales, apart from anything else, you're showing them what they're buying. Because whether
Exactly.
or not you are charging for customer success, as a line item on your bill, you are charging for customer success. It's not free, okay? It is part of what they're paying for. So shouldn't they actually, is it not their right to see it, arguably, let alone, should you not be showcasing, look, this is the fantastic thing that you get, that is not just the product, it's the product and our help to get the value out of the product. That's why you coming to us, right? Now, here's the person,
Yes.
here's the subject matter expert, here's the differentiation between, us and our competitors. So I'm
Yes.
totally with you on that. I'm really glad you said that.
Yeah. So now what you see is that, going back to your original question about how as CEO this should be structured, you look from the customer's perspective and you want this dual role. But then when you're executing, when you have dual roles, you have poor communication, you have silos, all
That's
that.
the downside of
it's really, so it's really important internally that they communicate very well.
Okay, so great point. So collaboration is critical. I have seen it in organizations before, and I don't suppose this is going to shock you, although it will probably be, disappointing, where, sales holds back and product holds back information from customer success, maybe vice versa as well. I'm hearing it, I'm being cried on, my shoulders being used by the customer success leader. The salesperson might have a different perspective on it, but from the point of view of the CS leader, they are not being given the data, the information that is being stored and held back as silos in other parts of the organization as a power thing. So that by holding onto that power, by holding onto that data, you make sales, or whatever the role is, more important and necessary, and so that gives you more authority and power within the organization, which obviously,
Rick, that's a problem with every function. It's not sales or product, it's customer success, marketing.
I'm not picking on sales here. I agree with you.
No, it's organizationally, unfortunately, it just becomes silos.
And of course, that is totally up to the senior leadership team, right?
Exactly.
The C level needs to fix that. The VP CS
exactly
cannot fix that.
That's right.
Of course, they can do stuff to help.
That's right.
They can bring their emotional intelligence to to the dance, but they can't make the other department head dance. So that's down to the culture of the organization, and that then means that one of the things, because again, like a founder of a business, I founded a CEO business, ran it for 6 years, a SaaS business, ran it for 6 years. I'm the founder of my company. I've been running that now for 3 or 4 years. And I know that I've got strengths and weaknesses, and not all founders and CEOs of small businesses are necessarily people. They're not necessarily good at developing a culture. They need to be, but that doesn't mean that's not that. Maybe they're subject matter experts in the field that they've developed their company in, and maybe they need to recognize that part of the role of being the leader of a business, that leadership thing, is about the culture, the vision, and that inspiring everybody to work together and collaborate to win the war, not the battle.
That's right.
Okay, so moving on then, I think there is a natural point at which a brand new startup business is going to get more excited about customer success management, because of course right at the very beginning you're developing your product, and then having developed your product, you've got to sell it, and then having sold it, finally you've now got a customer to help make successful. And then after a period, whatever that might be, a contractual period of X, now your first renewal is coming up. So by its nature, customer success management sort of steps up and ramps up in its sort of priority level. So with that in mind, when should the CEO start thinking about customer success management? Right at the very beginning, or not necessarily thinking about, but yes, thinking about, but then also actually introducing it in a practical sense?
Yeah, I think it's important to have a person dedicated to customer success when you cross 10 customers.
Okay.
You know, if you only have one customer, you know, it's probably
such a straightforward answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one customer is, you know, not, yeah. And also if you only have like 2 or 3 customers, it's hard to even hire a customer success person because the person may not want the job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, the idea, if you're
the ROI is not high enough.
Yeah.
And with that in mind, then continue.
So that means you start interviewing once you have like 3. So once you have 3, you start interviewing.
Okay.
So that when you hit 10, the person is on board.
So you're ready to roll. And then also similarly, in terms of, because obviously there's a lot of platforms and software dedicated to well, more generally to customer relationship management, but specifically also to customer success management. And I often say to companies, look, just hold off a little bit, because actually you don't know what you need at first. And it's only after doing it that, because there's one thing to like think and plan, but I mean, it's always different. Whatever you plan for is not what's going to happen, right? In life, in business, in everything. I think, is it Mike Tyson who's famously quoted as saying, as everybody has a plan until you get thumped in the mouth. And I think this is very much the case in a very, very similar way, you know, to businesses, because there's a sudden shock that it was nothing like what you thought it was going to be when you're actually there in the ring. And so, yeah, the plan goes out the window and all the rest of it. But that doesn't mean the planning wasn't useful, because of course, you know, that is where you then improvise from the plan to build the new plan that actually does work and does follow the situation. But that's my point, is that if you invest a lot of money in software platforms and spend a lot of your time getting them implemented and configured and set up this way and that way and the other, early on, very early on, then I think you run the risk of having your team then being almost servants to that software and spending all their time serving the needs of the platform rather than having the platform serve the needs of your CS team and really deliver what they need it to do. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I agree with you. I think the CSM methodology is not as well defined as like marketing, for example. You know, marketing demand gen now is a pretty well established process. And so the software behind demand gen marketing automation is a lot more in place. And we see the same in sales, because we were investors in Pipedrive. So, you know, early sales process, Pipedrive. Yep. I think CSM is not quite there. And in fact, I think the CSM software is more geared for managing lots of CSMs. You know, if you have a large number of CSMs and you need to manage them, then that's where the software is coming in. I don't think that the CSM software is really at the same fundamental level yet. It's getting there, but it's not quite there.
Yeah, I think it is a critical part of the armory that a customer success team needs. But as I say, for me, you need to hold off a little bit and grow to the size when you can really sort of justify the cost of it, but also when you know really what you really need that CS software to do, and what's really important. For example, in developing a health score that's meaningful for your customers, given your products, and so on and so forth. So I think
you have to have a playbook that works first.
Yeah, and that's an iterative process. So
yeah,
use the spreadsheets because they're a lot less expensive to reconfigure than the software. To find you've invested in the wrong software and it's got to get out and something else back in, for example. So okay, good. So I think we've covered that, unless there's anything else that you particularly want to talk about that. So what we're saying is that the stage in the lifetime of the startup is it should be thought about maybe straight away and planned for in advance, but that we may hold off until, I think you mentioned, perhaps 10 customers before we actually press the trigger on your first customer success leader going in, and then sort of that person then is a fairly hands-on role, developing up the team, and then at some stage you're probably then going to want to look for somebody who's more of a senior hands-off person, who may be that person, but that person may not be the right person. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, that's the problem is, and actually that's why we wrote the second book, is as the company grows, roles change, and as a result, people need to change or be changed.
Yeah. So the initial person may be like a director of customer success, and they may be a director role, but they're doing it. They're a hands-on customer-facing role, doing it and building the playbooks, building the strategy and developing it.
And most importantly, can be that trusted advisor for the customer, right. For the champion, sort of plays that role of being this great trusted advisor. Has that empathy for the customer, gains the trust, and sort of builds knowledge on how to help that champion become a hero.
So they're like a pioneer, aren't they? They are pioneering the way for customer success in company X. This is how we do it. This is how I've learned how we do it, and this is how we do it really well. And we've now sort of tied down some understanding of that. But then what you want is the more strategic role type person maybe coming in to build a larger team. And this is someone who can maybe
strategic and maybe more process driven.
Exactly.
The pioneers tend not to be process driven.
They're doing it themselves and maybe handling 3 or 4 or 5 people. But when you're getting to the dozen people or 20 people in the team, and maybe thinking about, well, growing it up to 30, 40 people in the team over the next 5 years, that's a different role.
Yes. The pioneers are very effective in delivering results, but it's not usually a process.
Yeah.
And the other person you mentioned can find the process so that you can scale it.
But may not necessarily be as good at doing it.
Not good at doing it, and also, and figuring out how to do it.
Doesn't want to do it.
That's
not
right.
the job they're applying for. And that's a really important point to bear in mind.
Yeah. They're better at scaling.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So we've got a two-stage, or if you like, a 3-stage process. We've got a plan for, but don't pull the trigger. We've got to pull the trigger with your pioneer, who is going to be very customer facing, who's going to help to really drive that customer relationship side of things. Make sure customers are getting the value and getting the customer journey that they want. And then ultimately the more sort of VP type role, who is more organizational minded, more process oriented, more able, not necessarily to do it themselves, but to use the combined forces of 12 people, 20 people to generate that value that is very difficult, impossible to do on your own. So so we've got that sort of 3 stages there.
Right. But if you don't hire the right pioneer, then usually the whole thing fails.
Right. And so is the pioneer somebody who is either, I'm setting this up, feel free to knock it down and say no, Rick.
No.
Who's either an expert in your products, or an expert in your customer's industry, or an expert in customer success management from some other company somewhere else? You've got a choice of three there. Which would you prefer?
I would say the thing that I would want the most is something a little bit different, is someone who has extremely good customer empathy.
Okay, so this is more about their persona, their personality, their emotional intelligence, their communication capability, the ability to befriend and get on with people,
and listen.
To see things from their side, to consult.
Yes, but listen. It's about listening, and then the first thing is customer empathy, and then the second is the passion to go and get the answer.
Okay.
Go to the product team, go to the sales team, go to the CEO, and solve the problem for the customer. So the problem I see if a person comes, as you say, with just industry knowledge, and say, I'm an expert in this industry, is that what you don't want is a CSM to say, I know more than the customer. Okay. So if you start with that view, then we'll fail. The pioneer needs to come in, because we haven't figured it out. By definition, we haven't figured it out yet, is you want someone with empathy to really listen, to understand, and then have the passion to work all the intercompany politics that you talked about, the silos and all that. So you want someone to just plow through the silos to get the answer or get the fix to help the customer.
So from your point of view, we could say that the customer success manager is both our person in the customer, but also their person in us. So they're representing them to the rest of the organization, and they're putting their needs first and advocating for them and getting what's needed for them.
Right. Because in the beginning of the company at this stage, there really isn't great alignment yet.
Right. Okay.
Versus, let's say the company has, 1,000 customers, by the time you get to 1,000 customers,
the second person that we talked about comes in to do the documenting. Right. What have we learned?
Yeah. And I'm just saying there's much more alignment between customers and the company and everything, because there's just so many more customers that both sides have learned.
Multiple times now, we understand it. Initially,
yes,
not understood yet.
And that's why I really like the word you picked about this role as pioneer. Because what does pioneer implies is that, it's like you're going through the wilderness. You don't know what the path is.
Right.
Once both sides, the customer and the company, understand the path, then this becomes less important. The traits I just outlined to you become less important. But in the pioneer, it turns out empathy and passion is super important, because you don't have a process.
Right. And it's going to be slower, just in the same way as in the Wild West. It was a lot slower, on horseback on the trail than it was once they'd got the lines down and you could go by train. But you got to get the track down first, and that takes time.
And you don't know where to put the tracks. You know?
Well, absolutely. You don't even know what's at the end. Yeah. So you got to go if you want to go there or not.
Because our problem of hiring the strategic person too quickly is they start laying tracks before we know where the path is.
And where do those tracks lead? We don't know yet. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And many times we build tracks that go nowhere.
And that also is my point about the platform. Again, you've got to just hang fire and just wait until it's the right moment, when you know that what you're purchasing is going to help you go in the direction you really do need, not the direction you just think you need. Because
exactly right.
More information later that makes you understand things in a different light and give you more perspective. And that's obviously very
that's right.
Let's move on, because I've got a number of other questions. I was sort of aware of the time, and I got a number of questions that I really, really want to ask you. We may have covered this again. It's a very general question, but let me chuck it at you and see where if you want to run with it or not. But here's my question: what expectations have investors got from a customer success management team? What do they expect that CS team to deliver?
It's really simple. It's just high net revenue retention and low gross churn.
There we go. So high net revenue retention, low churn, and that is the
gross churn. Yes.
Low growth churn. So that is the
gross churn.
Gross
yes.
churn. So that is what they're looking for, and that then is both important from the perspective, obviously, first of all, of the CEO to understand, because they, at the end of the day, are going to set the overall targets and objectives for what they want their customer success leader to do. But then also critical for the customer success leader to understand, because then they've got to organize their department and their team and their assets and resources and align them in a way to deliver those things.
Right. And then secondarily are like productivity, efficiency type metrics, but it just starts with those two. It is net revenue retention.
Side? Because you didn't, you've gone to the cold hard money, okay, which makes total sense being an investor. But what we've been saying all along at the moment is, the important thing is the relationship with the customer. So how are you kind of knitting those two together?
Usually if you have if you are that trusted advisor that could make your champion into a hero, then you have low gross churn and you have high revenue retention.
Right. So you're saying
what you're referring to is all the things
in the relationship
middle.
Stuff.
That's right.
It's the low gross churn and the revenue increases in the
yes, exactly. And there are a lot of things in between that you're referring to, customer satisfaction scores. There are a lot of interim things you can measure, but I'm just talking about the root cause, the foundation, and the ultimate output.
Right. So we're increasingly, a few years back, a lot of customer success measurement was around things like Net Promoter Score, around feelings and emotions, around CSAT. What we've seen it move to is more around things like NRR, net revenue return. And I am an advocate, as I mentioned to you before we started, also on customer lifetime value and customer lifetime, in the sense that what you want is to increase your net revenues per customer per period, but also what you want is to hang on to your customers for longer. And it's the combination both of selling more to any one individual customer on average and holding on to your customers for longer on average. That combination is so powerful.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, long-term customer value to CAC, that ratio measures the overall efficiency of your business. And so, we want that ratio to be above 3, and it's good. So it's a very effective way of measuring the economics of the business. So you're absolutely right. The reason why I'm, instead of customer lifetime value, I'm focusing on net revenue retention is because with net revenue retention, you can forecast next year revenue very easily. And so investors, what they want is a spreadsheet model of what you're going to do this quarter, next year. And so being able to forecast what your growth and your cash burn is. And net revenue retention
is very much an end result measurement rather than
yes, it's a measurement that tells you how good your business is. It doesn't help me. Yeah.
Where it's going.
It doesn't by itself allow me to forecast next year's revenue.
Yeah, absolutely. So your current number of customers and your NRR is what's going to do that, and you'll project.
Yeah, and basically what I find is that as a company, if you can build a simple spreadsheet model that can forecast, this year, next year, and the year later, and let's say your forecast is doubling and people believe your forecast,
Right.
then your ability to become a unicorn is much higher.
Okay. Well, we're losing you slightly.
Because everyone wants to invest in a predictable high growth company.
Right. So, and to be predictable, obviously, you've got to take the measurements, you've got to prove the value. Anything that you've made an assumption, you've got to know why you've made that assumption and be able to justify it rationally.
Well, so let me go back to net revenue retention. Why it's so important is that if you have a net revenue retention of 130%, okay, that means you should grow 30% next year, even if you have no new customers.
Without new customers. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so if you say, I want to grow 50% and your net revenue retention is 130%, then people have high confidence. If you say, I'm going to double, which is what everyone wants, everyone wants companies that are doubling. If you're saying I'm going to grow 100%, and I have a company with a net revenue retention of 170%, then I'm going to say, you guys are going to double.
Yeah, because you've got very little, net new to have to bring in. It's very possible, very achievable.
Yes. Yeah.
Totally.
But if your net revenue retention is 90% and you're saying you're going to double, I know that that's unsustainable at a certain period of time.
Yeah. Because obviously you've only got a certain size of addressable market.
Right. And it's just your costs are going to, then we look at the magic number to look at the sales and marketing productivity. And what happens is that the magic number turns out to be very poor. So this is what I mean by with net revenue retention, and then we look at magic number, gross margin. With these things, you can build a forecast of how this business is going to grow and how much cash is going to burn.
This is great. I think this is so useful for us to get a grip with. This is what we need to do in customer success management.
Yeah. And the other thing about net revenue retention is that because it's so important, public companies are reporting it, like Snowflake reports it. A lot of companies report it. And so people benchmark. They can say, is your net revenue retention A, B, or C? And so it turns out companies that have gone public have a net revenue retention of like around 130 to 140%.
Okay. And that's and as an investor, would you look at that?
Yeah, of course. This tells you, it's like, are you an A? We look at yours and we can benchmark and say, are you A, B, C, or D?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, sorry, let me rephrase what I said, just to make sure you understand what I said. As an investor, is 130 to 140% a respectable value?
That's a good net revenue retention. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we have companies in our portfolio that are at 170%.
And so, all right. So
but 130% is good. Yes.
Here's the $1 billion question. If a company is at somewhere between 100 to 120%, how do they get it to 140%? What's the secret sauce to get it from hovering around that figure to being a little bit higher than that sort of magic number? What do they need to do? In your experience, what have you seen has driven an upward check in NRR?
Well, ultimately, it comes down to three things: is you got to have low gross churn, okay, because obviously gross churn kills your NRR number. So you want low. Yeah. So you want renewals, basically, right?
You don't want your customers to leave you. Okay.
Yeah. So obviously you got to have renewals. So that means low gross churn. You want renewals, expands, and upsells. Okay. So basically there's going to be three contributions. So renewals, you want to minimize renewals, and what I find that the best way to minimize renewals is you want fast time to first value. So having fast time to first value is the key to minimizing, renewal risk.
Okay. One of the keys to a fast time to, sorry to interrupt, one of the keys to a fast time to value is customer success management, right? Because they have the knowledge and the skills and experience to help a novice.
Some, but the answer is they should. But what I found is that with companies is that they view this as completing of onboarding. So they have all these sort of like things to check off the list to sort of complete onboarding, but completing onboarding is not the same as first value. First value is looking from the customer's perspective of what the customer defines as first value.
Like, onboarding has come from the airline industry, right? Onboarding stops when you're sat in your seat with your seatbelt on, the tray folded away, and your seat upright. Then they can shut the doors. You haven't even taken off yet. That's onboarding, right? You haven't even begun the journey. You haven't pulled back to get on the runway. Onboarding is getting ready. Value realization then is after you've then gone through, after onboarding, a process of mastery of your product with the customer.
Well, that's why I don't really look at onboarding. I look at time to first value.
Yeah, very sensible from your perspective. Very sensible.
It is.
Measure it.
Yeah, I want to know when the customer gets first value and how long it takes me to get there. And that will tell me what my renewal rate is. So if you ask me how renewal is going to be time to first value, okay, then for expands, the thing I look at is do you know what your key usage metric is, and are you tracking that? Because that's what I find is that if you don't know what your key usage metric is, it's not good. It's like if you don't know what first value is, time to, renewals is going to be a problem. If you don't know what your key usage metric is, then expands are going to be a problem. Okay.
So why, you've got to really understand that why. That Simon. Why from a customer's perspective.
Yes. So, so the key usage metric, and then upsells is really about the product team aligning, building the right product that the sales can sell.
Value. Yeah. Okay.
The main problem I see with upsells is a product builds something which they say, hey, we know our customers want it, so we build it, you guys should just sell it. And if the upsell is to the same champion, it works well. If the upsell is to a new champion, it's like redoing the entire go-to-market process over again, and it's hard.
Okay, that's interesting. Certainly in my experience, and this is both with a small SaaS business, but also working with large enterprise technology companies as well, is that the experience on the ground by the users who use the product is very different, and their perspective is very different from the purchaser's perspective. And so from the purchaser's point of view, they're not necessarily looking for how easy is it to use, how pleasant is it to use. What they're looking at is, what value does this return to my business? That's a different question. But that user experience, very often you'll go in and you'll say, but you're not doing it how we taught you. And they'll say, no, we don't do it like that. So, because if you do it like that, it takes 3 times longer than this shortcut way that is not the proper way of doing it. But instead of doing all of that stuff you've taught us, we've worked out, you just press this button there, keep holding that down whilst you do that, and then you do this, that, and the other, and it's done 3 times as quickly, much more effectively. We prefer it that way. that needs to be fed back to the product team. Nothing to do with the purchaser's purchasing experience at all. But it makes it a more productive, efficient, higher quality, better quality product that actually delivers more productivity and less frustration to the end users.
Right.
That's the kind of thing that I think, that two-way conversation. Product obviously need to brief customer success. Here's the latest, greatest, and this is what it can do, and this is what we want to go out and evangelize the customer and help train them up on. But also, those who are talking to the customer on the coalface need to have some way of feeding back into product. But this is what they actually do. This is what they say.
Right.
Cool. All right. So look, we've got a few minutes left. How do you see the role and indeed the importance of customer success management evolving as we move, into the future? You see it changing much?
I do. I see it changing from a process role of just managing CSMs, basically, sort of like, how do I manage these people? How do I just respond to customer complaints, customer issues, raise my customer sat scores, all that kind of stuff, which I view process, to becoming more of as I say, by becoming that trusted advisor to help your champion become a hero. You're getting feedback what that champion wants and feeding that to the product team. So getting source of sort of product information becoming critical to drive new products, to drive that upsell motion, So we build product that the champion wants. So that is one, is to play that role. To play another role, as you said, we talked about in the beginning, was sales, to drive the expand motion as well. So both customer success and sales can play the role in a seamless manner to do that. And the third and most importantly is to really generate these hero stories of champions becoming heroes, because those hero stories is what's really critical to driving thought leadership. And so marketing needs that. And so what I'm talking, so these are ways in which CS is playing a strategic role, like a seat at the CXO table, of how they relate with sales, how they relate to product, how they relate to marketing in this manner, versus just, how do I manage the CSMs? How do I keep my CSAT scores in place and so forth?
Okay, that makes total sense. And what do you think about maybe the rise of automation and perhaps AI, which is on everybody's lips at the moment, of course, maybe playing a greater role in the delivery of customer success services to our customers? Any thoughts on that at all?
Yeah, I'm very interested in that. And ultimately, what I find is that what customer success needs to do better is to drive actions based on usage.
Okay.
In other words, once you know and this is why understanding the right usage metric is so important. Once you have the right usage metric, then you can measure usage and use usage as the first indicator of any problems with success or failure of customer success. In other words, I always found NPS to be irrelevant because, if I don't like the product, I'm not going to fill out the NPS score. I just stop using it. So what's a better indicator, early indicator of customer dissatisfaction? It's not the NPS. It's just if they stop using it. If you see usage going up and users going up, then I can see, what people are doing. And so I think, understanding usage and users is going to be where AI is going to come in a big role. And then with that, we can then start predicting and helping people in that manner.
One of the
So,
sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go on. No, go ahead.
Thank you. I was going to say one of the quotes that I like to often quote in our training is from Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, who says, or has been quoted as saying, that revenues is a lagging indicator and usage is a leading indicator. And I really
That's
like
right.
that as a very simple but powerful message.
No, absolutely. And related to that, Rick, if I could just share that one slide, is
Please go ahead.
This is something that I find really helpful is, as I said, is what we track is healthy net revenue retention. And so this is a company that it has, it's got very good net revenue retention around 170, 80%. We look at that. And what we found is that once you know what the key usage metric is that you can track net usage retention, and net revenue retention will follow net usage retention.
Okay.
And then if you have a lot of customers, this is a way that we visualize it, is how many times they use it a month and what their key usage metric is. And based on that, we can then visualize who's unhealthy and who's healthy on that basis. And so I think as we get that usage, start tracking usage better, that's where AI will come in a big manner.
Right, because it could just go into.
You have the data. AI needs data.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. AI needs data, usage data. It's a lot of data.
Data for breakfast.
Yeah.
And certainly, from my own experience, both in my previous SaaS company and in my company now, which is not really a SaaS company, but nevertheless, obviously, we like to resell to our customers. We like them to renew their membership with us. And we can say without a shadow of a doubt that the customers who use our service, use our product the most, are the ones who are most likely to renew, without the shadow of a doubt. I mean, it's just absolutely 100% correlative. Can draw a straight line between them.
That's right.
Okay, we've got 3 minutes left. One question I want to ask is, how can our audience connect with you if they would like to continue the conversation further and talk about what you do from an investment point of view? But is there, before you tell us that, is there anything that we haven't said about customer success management that you were hoping to say, to us, the customer success leaders that are listening in and watching this, that you want to deliver the message to them?
Yeah, I think, Rick, you already said it, but I just want to reinforce it, is, customer success is going to play a more strategic role in the company. And by that, it's not just CSM for CSM, but how it interfaces with products, sales, marketing. And that's how it's going to get a seat on the executive table.
Thank you so much.
And the boardroom as well.
So are you on LinkedIn, or are you?
Yes, and the best way to contact me is over LinkedIn. Yes.
On LinkedIn. So
yes.
Tae Hea Nahm. So let me just get that into the spelt like that. And Tae Hea, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. It's been fascinating. I've really enjoyed it. Sorry I've interrupted you so much. It's just my nature.
No, this is good. It helps me learn too. Yes.
Well, yeah, but I was hoping to learn from you, which I did very much do so. I've been absolutely fascinating. Would love to have you back maybe next year or something like that to continue the conversation.
Okay, that'll be great.
or maybe, as I said, maybe for that third book, keep us in touch with that, because that would be great to have you back to maybe to talk about the book launch when you get to launching. Any idea when that will be?
We're hoping in the next few months. We've been working on it for the last few years. I did 40 workshops with our companies on it to build the content.
Wow. Okay. So this is going to
we want to make sure it works. So we start with our companies. Yeah.
All right, great. So thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Tae Hea. Thank you for those who've been listening and watching. It's been fascinating. I hope you've got as much out of it as I have, which is a lot. And well, we'll see you next month with the next of our conversations. But for now, thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Rick. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.